Welcome to the intersection of law and politics, of life and art, of work, of work and life, whatever the intersection that you're currently at. I will meet you there here on the Midas Touch Network. I'm Michael Popok. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being such fervent supporters of all that we do on this channel, on Legal AF YouTube channel, and the rest coming off of I want to say the high of the 4th of July weekend. It was a lot of split screen, like, what the F is that? And, World Cup, of course, scandalized by Donald Trump and those around him, like the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. Never give up an opportunity to shit on and scandalize a worldwide event. I mean, it's just their legacy. It's just part of their DNA. But, I was with my family, and hopefully you were with yours. And, I was in a little slice of Americana. There was like a 4th of July parade. I thought I was in the 1960s with like political campaign rallies and not a Trump or MAGA hat in sight, going down some little main street on the way to see fireworks, which kind of got me all rejuvenated. And also, I did something I've never done before. I moderated today, just a couple hours ago, the ACLU's town hall with 4 of their top leaders about the Supreme Court, and more importantly, the call to action of what to do next. So it's evergreen. It just went up. It's on Legal AF YouTube under the live tab. At some point, we'll put up an asset to show you what I'm talking about. But I think you'll find it fascinating. The executive director of the ACLU, the legal director of the ACLU, the politics or political director of the ACLU, and the Voting Rights Project expert and leader, all coming together under Legal AF's banner. Really great, and so many different ways, and we'll talk about it at the end of the show too, to put your anger, your being upset, your hand wringing to good use. I think one of the things is here just kind of getting into good trouble together, right? Talking about what happened, but also what do we do about it? And what are the next steps? And I do it framed around whatever cases or matters or events that I think are interesting to kind of tell that story for that particular episode. So today I want to lead off with a case that just came out of Ohio. We're back to Ohio, thank God. And a judge there in Ohio federal court named Algernon Marbley, maybe one of my favorite, Algernon Marbley, a Clinton appointee, who effectively, I mean, you can read the 69 pages for yourself. I have it up on Legal AF Substack, but basically said that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are racists, and they don't like black people or brown people, and that their decisions about immigration are motivated by that animus and those statements. In fact, I knew it would finally happen because it happened at the United States Supreme Court a month or so ago. Donald Trump's comment about shithole countries, I'm just repeating word for word, syllable for syllable, what's in Judge Marbley's order, in which he blocked an executive order that denied green card and work permit status to people here legally in this country that just want to progress through the program. Sure, they might be from the Caribbean or from South America or from Africa or, yeah, okay, and so the judge methodically went through all of the public statements, not all of them. We'd be, there's no how much time do we have to go through all of the statements Donald Trump have made that have been racist and blatantly racist, or J.D. Vance? But he went through, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them, starting with the campaign about eating cats and dogs, all the way to shithole countries. And I always said, we haven't seen the last of Donald Trump's racism popping up in lawsuits. And the other thing that I thought was interesting about Judge Mabry's decision, I'm going to read to you from a couple of sections of it, in which he's forcing the Trump administration to issue green cards, process them, issue work permits for the people that are already in this country. The interesting thing is the use of the dissent at the Supreme Court level, we've always said, people always ask me on my show, the Unprecedented, about the United States Supreme Court or otherwise, what does it matter if we're on the losing end of some sort of 6-3 decision by the MAGA Supreme Court? You know, we're on the wrong end. The dissent might be eloquent by Ketanji Brown Jackson or Kagan or Sotomayor, but it's all for naught. Popok, it's hopeless. No, it's not. And we've said that dissents pop up in the darndest of places. One of them in particular is they show up in other judges' decisions. Yes, you're allowed to cite to the dissent. If you think it has the winning strategy or argument, at least about maybe not the holding in the case, the majority holding is whoever gets the 5 votes, but there could be an analysis, a historical reference or something. And Kagan's comments about Donald Trump, his hatred and animus of black people, and the use of the term shithole got recited by Judge Marbley in his decision. Let me read to you what he said. Then I'll play you a couple clips that he actually cites in his order, chapter and verse, and says, I'm going to take judicial notice effectively of J.D. Vance's and Donald Trump's racism. Here's what he says in his order. Let's start with pages... let's see, page 45. Or as the Supreme Court observed in Mullen, that's a case that Justice Kagan dissented recently about TPS, temporary protective status for the Haitian community. He said, President Trump has made statements that, quote, broadly denigrate countries or malign certain group of immigrants, such as Haitians, who have come to the United States. The judge continues, that puts it mildly. As the Mullen dissent explains, the evidence of racial animus is there, plain to see, in the president's statements, which the majority and the government's lawyers cannot even bear to repeat. Donald Trump says things that even his lawyers blush at repeating in court, and the MAGA 6 don't even want to repeat. These statements, here now the judge is going to repeat them, include President Trump's repellent, racially inflected statements about certain, cover your kids' ears, shithole countries whose nationals are poisoning the blood of the United States. I mean, we're talking about blood libel against black and brown communities that happen to be immigrants as well. And if you forgot that Donald Trump actually talks like that in campaigns or otherwise, we have a clip.
I've also announced a permanent pause on third world migration, including from hellholes like Afghanistan, Haiti, Somalia, and many other countries. I didn't say shithole, you did. Remember I said that to the senators they came in? The Democrats. They wanted to be bipartisan. So they came in and they said, this is totally off the record. Nothing mentioned here. We want to be honest because our country was going to hell. And we had a meeting. And I say, why is it we only take people from shithole countries, right? Why can't we have some people from Norway, Sweden, just a few? Let us have a few. From Denmark. Do you mind sending us a few people? Send us some nice people. Do you mind? But we always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster, right? Filthy, dirty, disgusting, ridden with crime.
Yeah, if Donald Trump ever read the Founding Fathers or the Framers or George Washington's letter, he would understand that this country was built on accepting people regardless of their station in life, regardless of their country, regardless of what caste they were born in or what advantages they were provided in life. In fact, we are a country that is supposed to accept the disadvantaged. But because Donald Trump was born with a silver foot in his mouth and it had a very rich immigrant father, we're still doing the research about how he got to this country, and married, I don't really know how she got naturalized, but some sort of naturalized model immigrant wife. This is the guy, what's the old joke? This is the guy that was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple. And this, of course, showed up in the judge's order. including the reference to Scandinavian countries. Top of page 44. Indeed, the public record, Judge Marbley writes today, is replete with direct evidence of the administration's hostility toward immigrants, with the possible exception of Scandinavians and white Afrikaners. Consider the extraordinary contents, tone, and nature of public statements made by the executive branch in his second term. These statements indicate an outright hostility to foreign nationals and immigrants from certain countries that the administration deems to be undesirable, or in the words of President Trump, shithole countries. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, here on Legal AF and Midas Touch and Intersection, we've got to use phrases like that because our President of the United States does. But now they're going to have to deal with Judge Marbley, who also didn't like the fact that Donald Trump not only talked about the Haitians in Ohio eating cats and dogs, but that he should have known it was a lie because J.D. Vance said he basically made it up in order to get the media's attention. In fact, we have here a clip of J.D. Vance to Dana Bash admitting that he made up the cats and dogs lie.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast.
You just said that this is a story that you created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not accurate.
Dana, it comes from firsthand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it. I didn't create 20,000.
Right. We have a word for creating stories. It's called fiction. He later said in another interview that he didn't know whether any of that was true or not, but it didn't matter because his point was he needed media attention for it. How much of Hillbilly Elegy is made up? I repeat, how much of Hillbilly Elegy, which he based his entire run for office on, a book that he wrote about his childhood, how much of that is fabricated? How much of a fabulist, in other words, is J.D. Vance? Something we have to look hard at as he decides whether he's going to run for office and we decide whether he should be president of the United States. And so this ruling just came out putting hardworking migrants and immigrants to this country on a path to citizenship and stopping the Trump administration from pursuing their worst instincts. But that's not the most shocking matter in court today. I just did a hot take about a case that was just filed by the Iranian Defense Fund, the Iranian American Defense Fund in D.C., in which they allege factually that the Trump administration has been cooperating with the Iranian Guard, the Iranian regime, to provide them directly in monthly meetings with information about who is seeking political asylum in this country because they're being tortured in that one. And Donald Trump is sending them effectively to the gas chamber by giving over to the Iranians, who we've been at war with since 1979, giving them name, rank, and serial number of who in our country is seeking asylum because they're being persecuted in Iran, and then put them on planes to Iran, including, sit down for this one, Christians. Christians are a minority in Iran who are persecuted. So Donald Trump is helping to persecute Christians. I thought this was all about a Christian nation, and he was all against civilian populations being attacked by Iran, and he warned them, and this was my red letter and all this other bullshit. Okay? You know who else is tortured and interrogated by the intelligence units in Iran? Pro-democracy groups. Pro-democracy groups are also being handed over by Donald Trump, according to this complaint. And what I found remarkable about the new suit is how little of it is on information and belief. See, in my business, when you think but you're not quite sure about a factual allegation, you hedge your bets and you use this phrase, upon information and belief. And then you fill whatever the result is. Upon information and belief, I believe X. They don't do that. They say there was a meeting between Iranian intelligence officers and the United States at the State Department in March, in which files were handed over, and it happened more than once. We're following. I've been a long day. Following that suit closely as well, but you can kind of put those two pieces together, right? So the other thing that I want to talk about, I want to riff on, has to do with the Department of Justice. I have a new name for the Department of Justice, which I just started using since around the 4th of July weekend. The Department of Justice, comma, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump Organization. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump Organization, as is the Commerce Department and the Treasury Department. They love updating their websites and throwing images of Donald Trump or golden seals or rewriting history. They should update their websites and call themselves a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump Organization. Because not only are they not independent, they don't want to be independent. They don't care to be independent. They're happy being a wholly owned subsidiary. And Todd Blanche is going to have to answer for a lot of that almost 1 week and 1 day from today during a confirmation hearing, which we will have up on Legal AF YouTube under a live tab with me doing reporting and commentary. Because Todd Blanche can have to sit in a hot seat and try to, like some sort of rodeo guy, holding on for dear life to hold on 8 seconds, so he doesn't get bucked off. He's going to have to try to hold on and hope he can come out the other side with any shred of anything left intact to be confirmed. He better hope he can get the votes, because the senators like Blumenthal, Cory Booker, and others who are Democrat are ready. How do I know they're ready? Because I interviewed them. I said to Senator Whitehouse, I'll tell a quick story. Before I interviewed Sheldon Whitehouse, I played for him a clip from Rocky Balboa, the movie, the one where Sylvester Stallone was like pushing 60. I don't know. I felt a kinship with it. And it's the scene where Rocky is being coached about how to take down this much younger fighter, played by an actual fighter. And the trainer says to him, to beat this guy, you need speed. You don't have it. Or you got to spar, and you can't spar. You've got calcium deposits on your joints. So what we're going to have to do is good old-fashioned hurting bombs, blunt force trauma. You got to hit him so hard that his ancestors shake. And I played that for Sheldon Whitehouse, because that's the kind of guy that I am. And I said, Senator Whitehouse, we need hurting bombs. My audience demands it. Okay, no more pussyfooting around during these cross-examinations. Not that he does that, but I mean in general. You got to hit him hard. Get the lawyers that are on your team to prepare. He's a lawyer. He's a former U.S. attorney. Blumenthal's a former attorney general and U.S. attorney. They got to prepare this like it's the case of their life, because our democracy depends on it. And around it is all of this, all these lawsuits about Todd Blanche that he's fighting off. Katie Fang, there's a development there. Friend of the pod, friend of me personally. That's a good headline. So they have to file by July 2nd and turn over the torture video, or explain why they can't order to show cause. Turn over foreign language documents, or order to show cause. Say why you cannot. Turn over the redaction log of all the 200,000 pages that you redacted with black lines. Explain what you did and why you did it, so that a third party like a judge can take a look. And they blew the deadline. They blew it off. We can't, we did, we didn't, we don't think you have the power to do it. And then they just ignore whole parts of the request. We're not going to translate the documents because we're not going to translate the documents. They thought that tautology was going to work with the judge. Literally, they wrote, we told the Congress that we're not doing it. And we're not doing it. That's not going to work. As to the redaction log, Katie Fang's lawyer, Brendan Ballou, who I've had on the show a number of times, was absolutely right. When I interviewed him a week ago, he said, I don't think they have a log, Michael. I don't think they kept the log. You know, they didn't write down 200,000 pages on a spreadsheet to have it ready, even though they were required to do it by the Epstein Transparency Act. And he was exactly right, because they basically said, we have a kind of a log and we gave it to Congress and that should be enough. And they don't have a log. They just don't want to admit they don't have it. And who comes flying into the case but Stan Woodward, which is Blanche's right-hand person. There's no real connection to the case, but parachutes into the case itself to try to fight this off. The judge took one look at those papers and, as expected, said, okay, Fang's side, you respond by the 13th, so next week, and I'll take it from there as the federal judge. He's not going to be happy. He didn't just make a new law in favor of independent journalists and just to let Donald Trump put up his middle finger and tell him to go eat it or pound sand. So while that's going on, we got another case, which is the American Oversight, great group, who started as a Freedom of Information Act request. Give me everything about Todd Blanche and Jeffrey Epstein. Give me everything Todd Blanche and Judge Cannon. Oh, I love that one. In Florida. Everything about Blanche, Cannon, Trump, and Mar-a-Lago. Yes, are there communications about that? See, if you had asked me 5 years ago, would there be communications between a sitting federal judge and a member of the Department of Justice when they were in private practice about a case or after, I'd say, are you kidding me? That's TV stuff. That's not real. That doesn't happen. I had Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse, on with me a few weeks ago. He said they're investigating whether there was contact between Emil Bovee, who was the original number 3 and Todd Blanche's law partner. Now he's a judge on the appellate court in Philadelphia, whether he had contact with 2 federal judges who sit on the appellate panel, the D.C. Federal Court of Appeals, Judge Rayo and Judge Katsas, about a case. I was like, why? I mean, it sort of like got glossed over because I had a longer interview, but my eyes almost popped out of my head that they're investigating something like that. I don't know if it's true yet, but they are investigating it. And similarly here, you've got American Oversight, which brings a lot of these Freedom of Information Act requests and brings a lot of these suits. You know, they currently have one to get all of Donald Trump's medical records. That's a good one. Shouldn't we get that? So in this lawsuit, they filed it. It was assigned to Judge Dabney Friedrich. She was appointed by Donald Trump. I'm not that enthusiastic that we're going to get a ruling in time. They said they need all of these things so that the senators have it to consider Todd Blanche's candidacy. It's a good argument. But the judge set a deadline of like the 14th, the day before the hearing. I don't think that bodes well. And so Blanche had his lawyers file a thing that says, oh, this is all about expediting the request, which they haven't done. So obviously it's a fait accompli, right? Like, well, we don't feel we have to expedite this request. We can just put it on the back burner because, you know, if anything came out of it, it would still be relevant even after the confirmation hearing. Really? It's harder to get him out once he's confirmed than to deny him the votes for confirmation. Would you not agree? I'm going to have the executive director of American Oversight on with me tomorrow for a follow-up interview on Legal AF YouTube. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy that as well. Let's see. What else can we talk about? I think when we come back from the break, I want to pick up with Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, the amount of money that is being diverted away from taxpayer dollars into the pockets of the Trump sons and the Lutnick sons, all around mining of rare earth minerals. And I don't just mean one company, although there is one company. I mean 14 companies that have some sort of interlocking relationship with Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick's family office that he founded, that his two young sons allegedly run, and or the Trump administration, or Donald Trump himself. See, Lutnick effectively has set up a sovereign wealth fund under his and Donald Trump's control, a slush fund, if you will, because the Commerce Department also, the secretary sits on the Export-Import Bank and on the U.S. Economic Development entity. And so they have a lot of billions of dollars that flow through those two entities that Lutnick can control. So I have a theory of how this was blackboarded, how this was gamed out by Lutnick and Trump. And it all has to do with Howard Lutnick and his company's position in the world as a broker. It also explains how Donald Trump is making a lot of his money. I'm going to cover that and a couple of other things up my sleeve when we come back from a break. So many different ways to support what we do here on Midas Touch, Legal AF, and The Intersection. Most of my day is spent on, as a founder, curator, managing director, managing editor, whatever you want to call it, of Legal AF, the YouTube channel. And great news, we just crossed 1.16 million. We got another 10,000 subscribers in the last couple of weeks over there. And that's really number one thing. If you're looking for ways to support what we do, come over to Legal AF YouTube channel, hit that free subscribe button, help us continue to grow. That gives me and the channel the street credibility, the muscle, the what's the word I'm looking for? The turbocharge to bring on newsmakers and guests and where I'm moderating for the American Civil Liberties Union, where tomorrow night Mark Elias of Democracy Docket and a voting rights and map expert and litigator joining us on Legal AF at the midweek as a special guest. It's because of you. You give us the juice to get these gets, and that I appreciate. We got that to support. Legal AF Substack, my new baby. It's one of my new babies. I have a real baby that's 2. This baby's 18 months. But with your support, we're already like in the top 30 of U.S. politics, but still need your help to continue to grow. You can become a paid member, which helps, keeps the light on and keeps the gas in the tank. I do a live report about every day. We have other amazing things like every order and filing that I do my research on and do a commentary on, you can find on Legal AF Substack. So that's 2 ways. Then you've got this podcast. Yes, it's a podcast. It's not just a video. It's called The Intersection. And you may be a YouTuber. I'm mainly a YouTuber, but it helps, really does help. If our audio is downloaded or you subscribe, come over to wherever you get your podcast from, plug in The Intersection. My picture will pop up. Hit download, hit subscribe, whatever you got to do. That helps. That helps keep us up and running and on the air and get guests and all of that. Another way to do it. And then people probably know this. About a year and a half ago, a little less than 2 years ago, I founded a law firm dedicated to our community called the Popok firm. And there it is. And we just redesigned our website and logo and all this cool stuff. Go check out the website for me. Let me know what you think. It is dedicated to people who have had their life turned upside down by a catastrophic injury, accident, negligence of others, some sort of major breach of law. There's my face. Law or contracts. You know, it could, and I mean catastrophic too. I mean, we're really focused on the things like that where families need support because they've lost a loved one, that type of thing. So come over to the Popok firm, and I put together an amazing team of 50 state coverage with trial lawyers who are at the top of their field working with me to support our audience. Is really mainly comes from our audience. And I really do appreciate the several hundred people that we're currently helping. So let's take a quick break. Last way to help the show. We've got sponsors. Jordy and I put them together. They've come flock into the intersection because of our audience. And let's take a break for them now. Before we continue, let's talk about Medicare for a moment, because Medicare is one of the most complicated systems in the country. Thousands of plans, endless fine print, and a lot of people giving you advice who are not actually incentivized to show you everything. See, that's the part nobody tells you. And most people assume they're seeing all their options. They're not. That's why Chapter exists. Chapter isn't an insurance company. They're an independent Medicare advisor. In fact, they are the only ones that compare every Medicare plan nationwide. They look at your doctors, your prescriptions, your priorities, and give you a clear answer. If you're already on the right plan, they'll tell you. If you're not, they'll fix it. They've helped folks in this audience save thousands on their Medicare coverage. They can help you too. It takes about 20 minutes, and Chapter is a free resource for my audience. So if you're on Medicare or about to be, don't guess. Talk to Chapter today. Starting something new, it's terrifying. When I first started this podcast and YouTube channel, I kept thinking, what if nobody listens? What if this doesn't work out? Those doubts are real, but taking that leap ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made. And it helps when you have a partner like Shopify on your side to help. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. Shopify is also packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Plus, Shopify helps you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And if you ever get stuck, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 customer support is always around to share advice. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/intersection. Go to shopify.com/intersection. One more time, shopify.com/intersection. And we have questions. We're live. If you want to put a question in the chat, I'll try to answer it. Here, let's hear. Here's Tracy H99. Hello, Michael. Question: do you think Graham Plattner in Maine has set Democrats' chances back from taking over the Senate? It's not helping. I mean, there is a chance that people in Maine so are disgusted by Susan Collins that they would elect, like a chopped liver sandwich. He's not great for the party. This is the party that drummed, Senator, who was the guy from Saturday Night Live? It'll come to me in a minute. See, he was a great senator. He was on his way to being president. Al Franken. He's a podcaster now, because they found an old photo of him when he was on a USO tour of army bases, when he was a comedian, where somebody was sleeping. There was a fellow comedian, but a female, and it looked like he had his hands on her chest or near her chest. And they drummed him out of the Democratic Party. Goodbye. There's the door. It was, seriously, they pulled out the knives and got rid of him. And he was a very viable candidate. This guy should not be in the party. I know Bernie Sanders is making a big push to get rid of him. I'm not sure I want to win that way. You have to have values too, as we do as a party. I think that's what distinguishes us, separates us from the beast, as they say. And no, I'm not comfortable with the way that race is shaping up. Bonnie Joe Statler says, can the governor of Kentucky insist on speaking to McConnell? McConnell may not be able to represent the people of Kentucky. That may be. I mean, there's been rumors he's been unconscious and never woke up. I think this is going to I don't mean to be crass, but I think this is going to sort itself out relatively quickly. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a miracle here. He's back. That's not happening. So, they'll go to whatever special, if he passes away, they'll go to whatever special election procedure they have. There'll be an immediate appointment by the governor. for the vacancy. And then usually the state requires a fast special election, or that person will sit there till the midterms. It depends on the state's because the state regulates this, as we know now from the 14th Amendment. Let's see what else we have here. Denise Temple, 1974, says, how do we fix the Constitution to fix this from happening again? Can we get age limits and term limits? The good news is we don't need a constitutional amendment, which is really, really hard, or to have a constitutional convention in order to fix the Supreme Court. That can be done through the House and the Senate. You just have to control the House and the Senate, and hopefully the presidency at that time. And then there's nothing that is set in the Constitution that requires 9 justices. There's nothing in there about being of lifetime appointments. There's nothing in there about not being subjected to an ethics code. So all this has to be hashed out in the what did one guy write recently? The hurly-burly of the political process. That's where it needs to happen. Me personally, I'd like to see an additional 4 justices. Sounds about right. Making it 13. We've gone up and down from as low as 6 to as high as 11, I think, or 12. It can fluctuate. Do that. Term limits. You can give them long-term limits. You could have like 15-year alternating, staggering terms. I've seen the Brennan Center suggest that every president gets 2 picks. So there's a rotation off and new blood on. I like that. I like that a lot better than what we're watching now, which is this imperious, cloistered, hermetically sealed, ultra alt-right MAGA Supreme Court out of step with American values and ideals. I'd like to change that. And I think they wrote their own prescription for the disease that they're suffering from. I think they gave permission to the American people to have a serious conversation leading to action about their reform. Every time another one of those, another shoe drops with another anti-women, anti-immigrant, anti-voting, anti-maps, anti-transgender decision, you have to look around and say, is this the country that I live in, that I was born in, that I admire? You know, what is your brand? What is your special brand of patriotism? What does your democracy look like? And I'm tired. I know you are too. You see the new talking points. You always know it's a talking point because everybody starts saying it at the same time, almost identically, like they're in some sort of trance. We're all communists. They don't like progressive, and they don't like the affordability. So somebody, who could it be? Stephen Miller came up with, let's call them communists, call them the C word and see what happens. First of all, democratic socialists are not communists. They're democratic socialists. And if you don't know the difference between socialism and communism, then you fell asleep in your comparative governments class or social studies or wherever that was taught, okay? Because we have a lot of socialist countries in this country that are not, in this world, that are not communist. Scandinavia, for instance, Norway, all the countries that Donald Trump wants to take people from, right? From Sweden and from Finland and from Norway. They're all very successful socialist countries that have a healthy free market enterprise regulated by a government with a healthy social safety net, healthcare, education, retirement, even vacation pay as part of it. And that's the society that that group of people want to live in. Doesn't make them a communist. It doesn't make them un-American. I mean, they are by definition un-American because they live in other countries. Doesn't make them bad. I don't agree with every democratic socialist principle. In fact, recent polling shows most people don't agree with the democratic socialists. I mean, even though they get a lot of attention, Bernie, Mondami, AOC, you look at the polling, it's 19%. But I like having them in the party. I like having them at the party. I like their ideas. They push the party into a certain direction. They push certain progressive ideas that we may not be ready for, that we might find uncomfortable, but we have to have that conversation. And we are a mature enough party in the democracy to do it. So I like that. But they're not communists. But it's a convenient, a cheap political point that it doesn't work. It's not going to get them back the White House or the midterms by calling other Americans un-American and communists. What are we, in the 1950s? I mean, seriously. What you're seeing is not communism. The fact that some part of America didn't celebrate the 250th birthday of America, it's because Donald Trump hijacked it. It's because he's so aligned that celebration with his own cult of personality that he made people feel that if they were celebrating that, they were celebrating him. And that's the reason. I saw all these armchair Monday morning quarterbacks in the New York Post and all these different places I read to catch up. Oh, the left, center left Democrats, they're not patriots. They hate America. They burn the flags. They couldn't even bring themselves to celebrate a gorgeous event. That was, that you missed the point. Okay. Then you fell asleep at the switch when America 250, a bipartisan committee, got hijacked and taken over hostilely by Freedom 250, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump organization. That's what I was rebelling against. Although at the moment, my 2-year-old daughter and my family and I were watching this Americana parade go down this little main street, little 300-yard main street, I did not think about Donald Trump for a moment. Okay, so reclaiming the democracy is hard work. It takes stick-to-itiveness, right? It takes diligence. It takes perseverance. It takes an ethic, almost like a work ethic. It's hard to vote when all around you that control the government are trying to stop you from voting, but you can do it. Okay. You're not getting shot at for it yet. It's hard to find that your government represents you when your map has turned red and your black and brown representative has disappeared or been legislated out of existence. It's hard to be excited about the democracy. It doesn't mean you're un-American. It doesn't mean you're not a patriot. It doesn't mean that your heart doesn't stir when you see the red, white, and blue, over the weekend, until Donald Trump crapped on the World Cup and scandalized it. And then the opposing team took care of it, and all of that. So I just want everyone to come off that 4th of July weekend as we continue through the summer and the all-important midterm election with a feeling of confidence that knitted together, yoked together, working together, we will defeat this administration, all those that are in it, and the values, that's not the right word, the policies that it's trying to shove down our throat and up different parts of our body. And we will do it together. Which lets me, before I get to the Lutnick story, let's turn to Fulton County. We had a great new order that came out today. Very surprising order from, as I said in my hot take that I have going up tomorrow morning, Billy Ray is back. William Ray II, a Trump-appointed judge in Northern District of Georgia, which is Fulton County Federal Court, which is where, Atlanta is located, said enough is enough with trying to use grand juries, criminal grand juries, to go after, there he is, to go after not just voters, but election workers. Is there any more thankless job than being an election worker in America, especially if Trump is anywhere nearby? And what the judge said, I'll read to you from his decision in a moment, is me, federal district judge, are responsible for administering and regulating what happens at the grand jury? Grand juries make the decision on indictments, but under the auspices of district court judges. And I'm not going to allow, this is my paraphrase, I'm not going to allow Donald Trump, who's trying to relitigate the 2020 election, to use the weaponry of a grand jury subpoena, which I'm not even sure is coming from a grand jury, as opposed to some out-of-district carpetbagging prosecutor who's parachuted in to my backyard and issued some subpoenas so that he can get the emails, personal data, and telephone numbers for everybody that touched a ballot in Fulton County in 2020. Denied, or more to the point, subpoena quashed. And let me read to you from that decision. Now, just before I get there, in case you were confused about another Fulton County election case, it was not presided over by Judge William Ray, but by a guy named J.P. Booley. That was over not a subpoena. A subpoena is something that's issued by, well, if it's in a criminal context, it's issued by a grand jury or under the auspices of a grand jury. A search warrant can be issued by a grand jury, but usually issued by a judge presiding over the prosecutor's investigation of a case. There was a search warrant which was based on an FBI agent's affidavit, which was based on about 10 or 11 election deniers and dark conspiracy theorists, some of which exist in the Trump administration, who have been running the same bullshit about Venezuelan software flipping votes from, oh, here we go again. This is the stuff that got, Fox had to write an $800 million check for, blaming Dominion voting systems again for having been in a conspiracy to flip votes from Trump to Biden. You know why Donald Trump lost Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia? Okay. I said it's the darkest blue. Is there a color darker than dark blue? Because that's how blue Fulton County is. So it's no shock that Donald Trump didn't win or come close in Fulton County. But this is all his made up bullshit to try to litigate the 2020 election all over again. And so that judge, the issue for Fulton County's election office was, Judge, return the 600 boxes and the voting equipment and the ballots back to us, because they didn't have the grounds to do it. And Booley let them do it. Keep the 600 boxes. This is a different issue. Now they got to go back to another judge. This is Judge Ray, after Fulton County moved to quash the subpoena issued to election workers about their personal data. Let me read to you. Let me turn my page here from my shithole country's opinion. For those that join late, you'll know what I'm talking about at the top of the show. Here's what Judge William M. Ray, my second favorite, Billy Ray. For those that know my first, you can put it in comments tonight. Here's what he had to say in his order, which we'll have up on Substack. Let me get the best of the best. Please hold. That's how we're doing live television. As Popok fumbles for the quote that he wanted. I think it's on page 5. Okay. Page 5. The DOJ argues that it has a legitimate interest in investigating potential criminal actions in the years that followed the 2020 election, including an alleged failure on the part of Fulton County to preserve its ballot images from 2020. However, even if such allegations prove true, of which this court offers no opinion, the fact remains that the focus of the subpoena is on what happened or did not happen during the 2020 election and the weeks immediately thereafter, not what may or may not have happened in the years that followed after the election. In these hyper-political times in which we currently live, Judge Ray wrote, there are sure to be some who disagree with this decision because they believe the allegations of fraud in the 2020 election and believe the light should be brought to those claims. But a couple of points are in order. First, nothing prevents a continued inquiry into those allegations by those who believe such claims, such as Congress or maybe the Department of Justice. It's just that the power of the grand jury which exist to investigate potential crimes and to bring viable indictments, cannot be used as their tool to do so. Second, and relatedly, that this result is fitting is clear if one considers the alternative. Otherwise, anyone in power, and then he speculates, perhaps the next administration of a different party could use the grand jury process similarly to subpoena personal information of citizens, perhaps that of their political opponents, with no legitimate law enforcement purpose. The information sought here, names, addresses, phone numbers, emails, is private and sensitive. Thus, everyone, whether you support the president or you do not, or whether you believe the 2020 election was fair or believe it was not, should be concerned about the DOJ's ability to utilize the power of the grand jury to appropriate your private information without a legitimate purpose. Subpoena quashed. Not the first one we've reported on. In the last 10 days, this is the second. And just to put it in context, I've been doing this for a long time. No, it's never happened in history that the Department of Justice in less than a month has had series of subpoenas quashed by different judges or any judges because they found illegitimate purpose. Judge Schiltz, Chief Judge of Minnesota, just got through quashing a series of subpoenas against Governor Walz, against our friend Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, and others, because he found improper political purpose. And here, this judge is effectively doing the same thing and saying, and by the way, I don't believe you either. And I don't believe the grand jury wants this. I think some out of district prosecutor that you parachuted into the case wants to do this, but I'm not doing it. You have grand juries who reject indictments. This is all the body of work for which Todd Blanche needs to answer, right? Indictments dismissed by judges for vindictive prosecution. You can do a drumbeat with me as I do this. Indictments dismissed by the Department of Justice itself because it committed fraud in a grand jury process or in testimony or in fake documents or in fake testimony, and they had to dismiss it themselves after they were caught. Grand juries who returned no true bills of indictment against Donald Trump's political enemies because they see through it and they see that the emperor has no clothes, as disgusting as an image as that is with Donald Trump. Today, over 1,000 former members of the Department of Justice, including at their highest echelon, U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys, criminal division chiefs, civil division chiefs, head of the appellate division, all joined together to write a letter to the senators, sign their name to it in this era. This is a badge of courage, right? A profile in courage, demanding that they not confirm Todd Blanche as Attorney General. It's remarkable. I don't want us to get, sort of glassy-eyed and fatigued by all of the aberrational conduct of this wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump organization. And the senators on the Democratic side are going to have to make Todd Blanche pay for it. I didn't even talk about the investigation being conducted right now by the Senate Democrats like Elizabeth Warren into not only the slush fund, the Jan 6th, pay your local anarchist terrorist insurrectionists for beating up the cops fund, but the next day amendment to that agreement executed by Todd Blanche by himself, which purports to give a get out of jail super pardon free pass to not only Trump's family, but affiliates of Donald Trump, to which Senator Warren says, who are the affiliates? Is a rare earth mineral company that Trump is invested in? Is that an affiliate? Right? These are all good questions. And they list all these entities that Trump's in bed with and said, are these all affiliates for which they just got relieved of criminal and IRS culpability and liability? These are like layups for the Democratic Party because Donald Trump doesn't care about the optics of his fraud and his fraudulent behavior. That's why he so confidently signed his financial disclosure form. I made $2.6 billion in crypto alone. Good for you. Except the investors who invested in you lost $7 billion. I mean, we've been pointing this out. This gets me to the Lutnick story next. From the very beginning. Let me explain how people in the brokerage business, what we call in the States brokering, and what they call in the UK broking, how they make money and how they don't. And you'll see the through line between Lutnick and Donald Trump. Brokerages like Cantor Fitzgerald, yeah, they got an investment bank buried somewhere inside there, but they're really, in their DNA, they're brokers. They make money on the buy and the sell. They make fees for when they're not doing the underwriting or bringing something to market or finding the money through their investment bank. What they're really doing is on the buy and the sell, they're getting a VIG. They're getting a piece. And the more buy and sell, the more volatility, the more velocity, the more money they make. They don't put up their own money. They don't take equity stakes. They make the money on the VIG, on the velocity, on the instability of the marketplace. So for them, when everybody's losing their head and buy, sell, short, whatever, and entering into all these different investment contracts, who's making the money regardless of what happens to that investment? The broker, right? That's why when Donald Trump got into the cryptocurrency business, he got into it not from speculating on buying and selling. He made a coin. Isn't that adorable? He made a meme coin with his face on it. Oh, but he also had a platform called World Liberty Finance. And World Liberty Finance, owned by the Trump sons and Barron Trump and Steve Witkoff, who's the foreign envoy, who doesn't know what the F he's doing in Iran, Donald Trump's golf buddy. They all own it together with their sons, along with a couple of guys that went to prison. I am not making this up. And that is a platform that sets the trading schedule and provides the liquidity for the buy and sell between two other people and takes a commission as a result. That's why Donald Trump didn't care what happened to the value of his coin or Melania's coin or this coin or that coin, because he was the broker. That's why he's so close to Howard Lutnick, because that's how Howard Lutnick made all of his money, through broking. Some people are probably writing in the chat right now. I just can't check it. You know who's going broking? The American people. Correct. So let's talk about what I think. Now, let me do my confessional. We should just have a pop-up for when I have to talk about when I worked at Cantor Fitzgerald. Boop. Okay. 5 years ago, for about 5 years, I worked at Cantor Fitzgerald. I was their global head of litigation. Yes, I worked under Howard Lutnick. Okay. It was a different Howard Lutnick then. Won't go into the details. I would not have worked for the current Howard Lutnick. I'll just leave it at that. And no, I did not know about the Epstein connections at the time. And if I did, I couldn't tell you, but I don't. But I don't. So we got that going on. So whatever I'm telling you now is not because I got insider knowledge, because my insider knowledge is stale anyway. And I don't talk to people there about these kind of things. Okay. I'm pretty sure this is what happened, though, based on my observations. Picture a blackboard and a coach talking about, let's just say like a heist movie, like Ocean's 11, where they got the graph and the chart and the okay, all right. Hear me out. Trump has wanted what's called a sovereign wealth fund to control money as a slush fund away from the Treasury since he got into office, and it was a wet dream of Howard Lutnick's too. But they could never get it passed. So they developed a new one. Lutnick, as Commerce Secretary, has his hands on the levers of lots of money, government money, and has the ability to invest through the Treasury in companies and take equity stakes in them, like a sovereign wealth fund. Got it? So he sits on the Export-Import Bank. He sits on the U.S. Development Board, and they control money along with the Pentagon. Okay, so now having identified that he can turn on a fire hose of taxpayer dollars and shoot it in a certain direction. What direction? Okay, so they came up with this. Cantor Fitzgerald had been in the mining industry as an investment banker and a placement agent to bring in money for mining operations like rare earth minerals for a long time. They know there's money in mining, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So somebody, if I had a guess, it would be Howard Lutnick, said, I got an idea. You, Trump, put your sons into the mining business. They don't know anything about mining, but tell them to buy a lot of rare earth companies. American Vulcan and a company called Kaz Resources about Kazakhstan and 14 other companies that the Trump kids through different investment vehicles invested their money in. Okay. Now, does anybody think it's a coincidence that the Trump kids suddenly were big owners of a portfolio filled with rare earth mining companies? Of all the things they could have invested in, the thing that Cantor Fitzgerald is good at finding money related to, and the thing that the father of Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, can direct money to? No. So somebody said, you Trump sons, you go into the mining business. You Lutnick sons who are running my company, you do all the investment banking, the private placement, the what we call the pipe placement, the funding. You do the funding side and you get tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. Trump sons, you get the equity, you get the money. Lutnick sons, you get the brokerage commission and the investment banking fees. Got it? Me, Daddy Lutnick, I'll take care of getting government contracts worth billions of dollars and funds channeled and funneled to these companies. And where it's appropriate, I will even force the American government and the American taxpayer to take an equity position, meaning we own stock in one of these companies. Like, do I want to own 10,000 shares in some rare earth mineral company that Trump's kids are in? And here's the problem. If you think this sounds like, if your nose is scrunching up and you're thinking, Popok, isn't this like illegal or unethical? Isn't this like bribery? What about the... Yes. And so the Senate Democrats for now, and eventually, hopefully when they have the gavel, real oversight. See, Lutnick better get out of there after the midterms, because impeachment proceedings will be arriving on his doorstep if he's still in there when the Democrats get the gavel. It has to be, but they're starting it now. So they're sending out letters to all of these rare earth mineral companies, many of them outlined in a very good article in the New York Times about these different relationships that came out over the weekend. But I knew about a number of them. So Elizabeth Warren and Senator Wyden and others, Zoffler and others, sent a letter to one of the sons of Cantor Fitzgerald, demanding to know, and reminding them that their father may be subject to bribery investigations. But I just outlined for you what the Trump administration believes is okay. That it's okay for Lutnick never to disqualify himself because he sold to his sons for $1 his billions of dollars of equity in the family-owned business. Does anybody believe that as soon as this gig is over at effing America, that he's not going to go back to some version of Cantor Fitzgerald and kick his sons out of the corner office and take it back over? Who really believes that? Okay. His goal is to make as much money as possible, 20, 30, 50, 100 times more, 100% more than he made before he went into office. But on the way out, he's going back into the corner office. And so he should not be sitting and straddling this fence of being both sides or all sides of the deal. I'll give you an example. President of Kazakhstan comes to New York. Kazakhstan, a relatively poor country, used to be in the Soviet Union. It's landlocked, doesn't have a port, doesn't have water. You know what it has? About a third of the world's rare earth minerals, including tungsten, which is a mineral that we use for defense contractors, weaponry, fighter jets, computers, you name it. And so if you can get a lot of tungsten, it's helpful. So you've got the president of Kazakhstan meeting at the St. Regis Hotel, a block from Cantor Fitzgerald, with a whole bunch of financial services types, like Goldman Sachs and this bank and that bank, and in trots in Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. And it's on video, so you don't have to take my word for it. He says, we can do business together, out loud. We could all profit from this. That's my Howard Lutnick impression. We could all profit from this together. Not together. My family business across the street, and Trump's sons in Trump Tower, and then there may be something left over for the Kazaki people, I'm not sure, over your tungsten. So I just mapped out for you a pretty likely scenario of how they've gotten around not being able to build a sovereign wealth fund by building effectively a virtual sovereign wealth fund to benefit the families of the Trumps and the Lutnicks and those around them. And that all comes from using other people's money, getting a VIG. That all comes from that's not a real estate developer's mind like Trump. That's a broker's mind like Howard Lutnick, who grew up in that business from his 20s, took over the company in his 30s, and there we have it. See, in real estate development, you get paid differently, okay? You use other people's money, including banks. You hope that the market holds when you bring your project to market. You take out a series of bridge loans. You put very little of your own money in. You try to sell out whatever you're building early, and bring it to market online, hoping that the real estate market at that given moment hasn't crashed, and you make the delta. You buy the property for $100 million. You put up, you do construction cost of $200 million. That's $300 million, and you hopefully sell out at $1 billion, and you make the difference after you pay out real estate broker fees, advertising fees, carry costs. That's how you make money in real estate development, right? And then, some amenities that you build in there. Maybe you keep a condo, like a commercial condo for stores. You sell that out but you make, $500 million on a project that I just described. That's not brokerage. That's not making the VIG on every sale of somebody else. And that's the thing that's been missing in the reporting, and where I think I bring value. I hope I bring value. I'm glad you're thinking of value. I'm glad you're all here. This is The Intersection. I'm Michael Popok. We won an award because of you. I have it. I have many of them. There's one. This is a Webby. This is what it looks like. All because of you. So many ways to support what we do. Help us download more of this Intersection podcast on audio. Audio download, so important to what we do. I can't exactly tell you why, but I keep being told by the people, the suits that run this network. No, I'm kidding. I keep being told by the brothers, we need more audio downloads. I'm like, all right, I'll ask the audience for more audio downloads. That's fine. So come over wherever you get podcasts from and hit download for The Intersection. That's one. Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel. We just got another 10,000 subscribers for free subscribers on Legal AF YouTube. Hit the subscribe button wherever that button is there as well. I think I'm going to get some graphics going here before this night is over. I'm hoping. There they are. I'd do it myself if I could have my own control board. Okay, so we got that going on. That's helpful. And then we've got the Substack that goes along with Legal AF, where we do live reporting and post all of our filings and legal commentary by different people. Give you an example, programming note. Tomorrow, Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, is in Milwaukee for the sentencing of Hannah Dugan, that judge who, may or may not have let that person that ICE wanted out the back door. She's getting sentenced. Former state judge, and he's going to be there. Anyway, he's going to pop on with me to do a live Substack from Milwaukee sometime tomorrow, which I thought it's interesting to you. So subscribe there as well. And then lastly, it's a simple equation. I formed a law firm to help this community. I've been a lawyer for 35 years and I've had firms before, but this firm is specifically dedicated to our audience and to help you if anything that turns your life upside down, catastrophic injury, use that QR code. We got a brand new website. Let me know what you think about it. If you've been injured or anybody in your life has been injured, maybe loss of life, unfortunately, and you need tough fighters in your corner against insurance companies or companies for the negligence of others, come to the Popok firm. Literally, I think almost 100% of my client base is our audience. And I really do appreciate that. We've got lawyers, top lawyers. There's the download. Top lawyers around in all 50 states who work with me to staff and run these cases and to help you. You don't pay a fee unless we collect. Glad you're here on The Intersection. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right back here on the Midas Touch Network. Mark Elias, voting rights litigator extraordinaire, joining Karen Freeman Ignifilo and me for the Wednesday night edition of Midas Touch live tomorrow night. And then Saturday, back with Ben Meiselas. Oh, thank you for putting that up. This is just like random. It's like whack-a-mole, just random assets going up. Okay, ACLU Town Hall. I just moderated a town hall with the executive director of the ACLU, Cecilia Wong, its litigation director, Deirdre Schiefling, its head political arm section leader, Sophia Lynn Lakin, who runs their Voting Rights Project, and me. It's up on Legal AF YouTube right now under live. I think you're going to really love it. It's a wrap up of the United States Supreme Court, but also call to action about what you can do if you're looking for something to do to help our democracy. So in the meantime, thank you for being here. Shout out to the Midas Mighty, the Legal AFers, and the intersectionists. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.